One of the reasons I love Greg's new book, The Pulse, is he gets bump music in a way that I've been begging my producers and engineers to get for years. Greg, welcome. The Pulse is a great read. Great to have you on this morning.
Thank you, and what a pleasure to hear the Cramps at 8:30 in the morning. That's
Yeah,
a great start.
the plus is it's got this little soliloquy on bump music and why you pick what you pick on the five. Would you repeat it for the benefit of Dwayne and Adam? Because they always fight me on my bump music. I want bump music that hits my endorphins, not theirs.
Exactly. What drives me crazy is bump music that you can hear anywhere else, right? Like I don't need to hear a Taylor Swift song or a classic rock song. What I try to find is stuff that I like that I can introduce to other people to make them like, and also to give bands that may not have big exposure, some exposure, right? But it's always quality, fun music. It's just not the stuff you hear in the elevator or in the shopping mall when we used to go to shopping malls.
Well,
So it's to introduce something unique.
it was one of the side benefits. I want to get to the real stuff. Today at 4 o'clock, by the way, I'm going to talk with Greg Gutfeld for an hour about the plus. And I'm going to do that because the plus it's kind of a very different book than I expected from Greg. It's a self-help book for people who hate self-help, but it's actually more of a meditation on where we are as a country right now. But I begin with a bitch. I'm not listed on page 115 as the best minds on the planet. Penn Jillette to Scott Adams to Brett and Eric Weinstein to Robert Wright and David Rubin. I've heard of half of these people. I'd never heard of Eric Weinstein. Never in my life have I heard about this guy, but you immediately persuaded me by telling me about his comparison of ideas to stocks. Expand on that because that actually is brilliant.
Yeah, if you have not heard of this guy, he works for Peter Thiel. He's a managing director or something for Thiel, and that's how I heard of him. But he talks about instead of having a this or that, or like I'm pro environment or pro nuclear, you can hold different ideas like a long and a short, the same way you would do with stocks. And he does that with his example is with immigration. So you can be for like have a fairly like I don't know open view towards some immigration, but be against. I think he's against these skilled labor immigration because he believes that hurts the skilled labor here. So he can have one short. He can have that for short term, and then he can have the other one for long term. So he looks at it like he's like a stock portfolio, which I never have done before.
Neither have I. And I began to think, I know I hold Amazon. I will never sell it, and I will never sell out the Constitution. That's my long-term position on America.
Exactly.
But I am pretty malleable on immigration policy. I think I agree with you about on 90%. I like skills visas, but we agree on the fence. We agree on basically a regularization of everyone in the country. But those are short holds, right? People can give me data, and I'll change.
Exactly. And it allows you to, believe it or not, have a conversation and a debate. That's the whole point of it. It's like it's not the end. It's the prison of two ideas is what we're living in right now, where we can't talk anymore because if you're seen leaving your own prison, that's somehow a betrayal against your allies, which is what we see every day now. And that's what, in my opinion. Go ahead. Sorry.
The polarization that you point out is what media sells. Television especially sells polarization of every interview. Your observations on the media here. I'm not sure how they're going to go over with your bosses at Fox News, but generally speaking, you have accurately diagnosed the problem, which is every panel has to be the two-prison dilemma.
Yeah, exactly, because then they won't get any fireworks, right? And so what you have is the consequence is what you're seeing in stuff like Portland and Seattle. There are leaders who do not want to express support for law and order because then that is seen as being in the other side. Like you're on the side of Trump when in fact everybody agrees some kind of common sense response to chaos and disorder. But if you venture out of your prison, which is we need police reform, that's the prison. You only can believe in that. And if you leave that, then it's seen that you're on the other side. Whereas there's an infinite amount of steps in between both sides that you can take. But people can't do it because they're now instructed to stay in their little silo and parrot whatever they heard on MSNBC.
Or Fox. Hillary Clinton was the first person on this show to make the point you make in the plus, Greg, which is we can hold two ideas. We can actually have a multiplicity of views that are graded in shades of white, gray, and black and hold them all at the same time. In fact, we do that in everything other than politics. The plus makes that clear. I want to get to the second person I'd never heard of that I want to give a shout out. We'll talk more about both of these people this afternoon at 4 p.m. And if anyone wants the long form, go to nixonfoundation.org, nixonfoundation.com, and sign up. We're there at 4 p.m. I have never heard of Tom Schiller. I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing his name the right way, but I like him. You describe him as a religious and intense man who finds the Catholic Church in every town we're about to perform in. That's me. He's habitually surprised by life. I swear if I showed him the same Snickers bar he had seen minutes earlier, he'd react with glee. I'll say, Tom, it says here the venue's 3 hours away and the weather is horrible. He'll respond, imagine what could happen, Greg, as if that's a plus, not a minus. I love this guy. I love this guy.
Yeah, I was just with him. I did an event at a drive-in theater in Cape Cod Sunday night in a rainstorm. It was outside. It was wind gusty. It could have been canceled. But when you're with somebody like that, to him, it is always like the curiosity of life overtakes the anxiety. As somebody who is always anxious, I'm anxious. To have somebody who's able to kind of like shift that, it's like almost like a hybrid engine. He's able to switch it over into like curiosity. Anxiety becomes curiosity. Guess what, Greg? You don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen. It's going to be great. And it's like all I have to do is switch that on, and it reduces the anxiety. That's why I love touring with him. He works at Fox. He's got a game show on Fox Nation. He's a comedian, and he used to do a lot of red eye. And he does my show maybe once a month on the Greg Gutfeld show. So people who know me probably know him pretty well. Does a bang up impression of what's his face? Who's the dude? Adam Schiff.
Oh yeah, does he?
Yes.
How old
Incredible.
is Tom? How old is Tom?
Probably mid-40s, I think.
I got to make his acquaintance. All right, let's get back to the book. Well, first of all, I want to test on you one idea that's not in the book. You made me think of it, though. The Democratic convention is a nightmare. It's the most boring thing I've ever seen on TV. So my suggestion to the Republicans is that they have President Trump tape 21-hour interviews and that they run those back to back to back with 20 different people. You would be one of them. And so I would just let him do 20 one-on-one interviews for an hour and then use all the time with Trump, because that's what we're voting on, pro or con Trump. What do you make of that? Wouldn't that be more interesting than what the Democrats are serving up?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great idea. And it was funny. I predicted almost everything that was going to be said last night because we already knew by the way all the Democratic convention was going to do was reflect what you saw in the mainstream media over what you would see on CNN and MSNBC, the same sentiments about injustice and about as Michelle Obama would talk about Donald Trump, like it's the lack of empathy. And so this is a thing that you can't measure, right? You can't measure lack of empathy. Before the pandemic, you could measure jobs and you could measure the economy, and which Trump was doing fantastic on. So the only thing the Dems have writing for them are variables that cannot be measured. However, now they're going to use obviously the death count from the pandemic as a measurement of incompetence or ineffectiveness. But I do think you're right. I think that what the Republicans should be doing is watching what happened last night and these next few nights, and then change
Everything.
Because they use this to their advantage. You got a head start. You're seeing what's working. And I can't imagine anybody sitting through that.
No, Trump's the best interview in America. Just do it 20 times. Now, I want to go to the heart of the book. I tweeted this out last night. I don't know if you saw it. I think the price of the book, The Plus, I'm talking with Greg Gutfeld about his new book, The Plus, is paid for on pages 74 to 80, which is an explanation of Never Trumpers. Now, I have thought a lot about, because I've got so many Never Trump friends, and I went from reluctant Trump voter, I voted for him, to being a Trump endorser and enthusiast because of what he's gotten done, especially on the courts and the military in China. You describe yourself as a Trump skeptic who's changed, but you talk about, and I'll just boil it down. The reason these people are this way is that they cannot explain why so many people find this person appealing, but they don't. Would you expand on this, Greg? Because you've unlocked the key here. The lock.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I kind of compare it to Elvis Presley
Yes.
and music. It's like when Elvis came on, the effect on music was like it was condemned as obscene and disruptive, and the keepers of the gate, the people that were so used to understanding and being successful in that realm, became shrill and humorless, and that's what happened. And you can see this in all kinds of music, from Elvis to punk rock to rap music. But the other thing too that I had to deal with is the concept of a sunk cost. If you already had this kind of emotional investment, you can't let go of it. Even as your friends are like, I had friends that would take me aside and go, Gutfeld, are you really going to vote for Hillary? Which I didn't. But it's like, what's wrong? And I couldn't shake the feeling that I had invested so much emotion into my skepticism that I couldn't let go. And once you actually step out and see that sunk cost for what it is, then you can let go. But I think, like, if you look at the Never Trumpers, how intense they are in their grip. Like Jennifer Rubin, I mean, is completely unbalanced. When you read her tweets or just see her on TV, there is something off. And I think it's because they've
The sunk cost. Megan McArdle
Yeah.
wrote a book called The Upside of Down, which explains sunk costs for the non-economist, and I think you're absolutely right. And I want to close this part. We'll talk about it tonight. Your comparison with Elvis. I went to a little cabaret show once with Jack Jones, who began after his first song. He said, "I'm Jack Jones. I was the next big thing until Elvis came along," because he was going to be Sinatra, and then Elvis disrupted everything. I've not seen that in print. Have you made that argument on the Five, Greg, about Trump Elvis yet?
Yeah, and I do it in speeches. With that kind of it's almost like Mitt Romney is Jack Jones. You know?
Yes.
But
Yes.
then you ask yourself, will anything be the same after Elvis? Will anything be the same after Trump? Like, can you go back to, I don't know, I think maybe there'll be the argument for boredom. Like, maybe we should just have like a Mitt Romney as a nominee because Trump was so exhausting. I don't know if I used the line in the book, but Trump is like a 3-hour drive to 1 hour at the beach. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of effort that goes in. The beach is great, right?
Yes.
But the 3-hour drive consists of like us having to explain to our friends that Trump could be obnoxious. He says something mean, he tweets. That's all the stuff we got to explain. That's the drive, right? But then you get to the beach and things are going great. It's deeds versus words. You know, his deeds are fine. It's the words that drive people nuts.
It's 2 Supreme Court justices. It's 53 appeals court justices. It is a military that's rebuilt. Greg, I look forward to talking to you today. Hey, if you're out there, watch the NixonFoundation.com at 4 p.m. today. The Plus is a fun, wonderful read. Greg Gutfeld, always a pleasure talking to you, friend. I'll talk to you later today. When I come